Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to another episode of Newsround for Anfield Index. It is Thursday, the 31st of July, the very last day of the month. It's been a bit of a weird week. I think it's been a week of almost waiting, especially maybe for other clubs to do the business for many of you. But here we are. It will be August, and the season gets ever closer. I mean, there's many things to talk about. There's one common person which we'll be talking about, no doubts at all. But actually, where we're starting, I'm saying this actually, I don't even know if it's going to surprise you. You've got to go back to yesterday, haven't you? Because yesterday, British time, 11:30, the Reds were playing in Japan, weren't they? In Yokohama, in a ridiculously humid place on I'll be honest, a ridiculously bad pitch as well, by the looks of it. I mean, it was absolutely terrible. I don't really know how else to put it. And I always think it's strange for multi-million-pound tours, commercial purposes, because that's what they are. Yes, I get people will say it's preseason fitness, absolutely. But we know there's a reason why the Reds go out to the Far East. That's not being derogatory at all. It's just the smart play. But for all the money in the tour, for all the funds around it, it still absolutely astonishes me that the Reds end up playing on a pitch like that. But that's that rant over. That's just me. And speaking of ranting, I am your host, Dave Davis, coming to you from the sun is out in Edinburgh already. It is humid. Not Tokyo humid, but yeah, it is warm. It's been a nice summer, so we can't moan too much. But what is the main topic on Newsround to start with? As it says, that 3-1 win yesterday against Yokohama. We saw that most of the first team players played the 60 minutes, didn't they? There were some substitutions at half-time, like Hugo Ekitike came off, Ibu came off as well. Some introduced after sort of 60, 65 minutes, but not as many changes as there has been. And it was a 3-1 victory for the Reds, wasn't it? They went 1-0 down to Yokohama Juniors. However, there was the equaliser when Florian Wirtz. I'm saying this, I don't know if you can say a friendly as he officially opened his Liverpool account, but I'm going with it anyway, whether it's official goal or not. From almost a Salah pass to Curtis Jones, a bit scuffy into the area, but a lovely controlled finish into the bottom corner. We then had a first real bit of magic, and maybe I'm being a bit harsh on this because the Reds could have had probably 2-3 goals in the first half if the pitch was any decent, to be honest, and players could run onto it properly. But that second, two of the subs, Frimpong, a brilliant whip ball, and young Trey McNione, the Alexis McAllister heir apparent, slides in, doesn't he? And then the third one, it's all about the little magician of the moment, isn't it? Rio Ungamoa. And on a slot, as you can see on the screen here, if you are on social media with us, that he kind of downplayed it a bit because, of course, he was asked about Rio Ungamoa's performance. And what did he reply? Well, like I said, he wasn't the only one that impacted the game from the bench because Trey Ione, also a youngster, scored and was assisted by Jeremy Frimpong. Got to play it down a little bit, and quite right, because they know how special this kid is. And also, just a reminder to young Rio, there was also a moment in the game where he could have squared it to Maka or Curtis. There are also learning parts for him. If you are 16 and you can impact the game like he did, that's definitely worth a compliment. I think Arne Slot is far more than complimentary about Rio Ungamoa. We said it on the transfer show last night. We said it on a few pods. They literally considered fast-tracking him last season into the first team, but made the decision not to. He's obviously developed physically. And people have looked and gone, we need, and I get it, I'm still for this realistically, 5 forwards and Rio Ungamoa. I think we'd like, we'll come to Isak and possibly another one, as we said, Rodrigo, Fofana, whoever you want it to be, which we've talked about. But Rio Ungamoa is the fascinating one for me right now. Is it the Chiesa role? Because Chiesa role was 500-600 minutes? But with Rio Ungamoa, again, you've got to manage him carefully. It's got to be at the right time. But I wouldn't be surprised if they're looking at maybe around 1,000 minutes or slightly more. Nothing. I think obviously not going to push it too far. It's got to be at the right times. But yeah, I think Rio and Gamoa's doing things that I saw a few friends have said, oh, he almost reminds me of Sterling when he first came through. No. He looks far more accomplished than Raheem Sterling did when he first came through. There's more of a technique and ability, I think, as well. This kid is going to be special. But the Reds are on the way back, aren't they? They're on the way back to England. I think they've actually landed, haven't they? They flew pretty much straight after. So those players are in. And look at that big, handsome bastard of attacking trios there. Pearce, Gorse and Steele, they are back in the UK as well. So we've got the patch journalists back, the players back, touchdown, all fine. So what else are we keeping an eye on? I mean, this Isak saga, you've seen that, is it that GIF meme, whatever they call them, where the Titanic lady, it's been 84 years. That is what it feels like right now, doesn't it? It has dragged and dragged and dragged. It is a saga now, it's fair to say. Whereas Florian Wirtz wasn't. It had a development, had a few twists. I don't think it was long enough to be a saga, personally. This, 1,000% is. We've had rental houses on Rightmove. We've had no-shows, which we'll talk about. We've had potential British record offers, D-Days, as people have called it. Now, the GOAT himself, Indy Callier, tweeted earlier, today is a big day in the Isak's saga. And some of you are going to scoff. I know you are. Some of you are going to laugh. But just being factual, it's ridiculous how much Indy's got right over the last 18 months or so. That's not an exact period, but call it roughly. It is. And then your old friend Fabrizio, who needs to, do what Fabrizio does, tweeted, didn't he, literally late last night, that Alexander Isak keeps on waiting for Liverpool. His only clear choice, despite reports on Al Hilal and more clubs. Personal terms are never going to be an issue, as choice has been made weeks ago. Liverpool or Isak swear Liverpool prepared for record bid if Newcastle will open doors to a sale. So essentially, we're just playing out the whole drama at the moment, aren't we? Everyone's waiting for the bid to go in. Indy's suggesting it could be a big day. I've seen a few others suggesting that it could be this week. However, let's be honest, with Alexander Isak, there's been a lot of things suggested, haven't there? I think the only thing we know for certain is his head's been turned. He wants to go to Liverpool. Newcastle are having an absolute nightmare trying to bring any striker in. But we are hopeful, aren't we? Because probably not for Sesko. I think people expect him to end up at United, but they're trying for that one. Visser, Rodrigo Muniz, Ollie Watkins. There's a few others they're looking at as well. So come on, just get one or two through the door and then we can do this. And then yesterday, even the latest developments coming from Spain, weren't they? That Alexander Isak is currently training individually at Real Sociedad's facilities in Spain ahead of that potential move that way. Now, you might be thinking, why am I talking about it in training in Spain? I suppose a couple of things. Number one, it is the latest development, so we're just trying to keep you informed of that. And number two, there was an expectation from the Newcastle side that he would be back at the training ground to do some sort of rehab. Whether that's realistic, that's a different discussion. But here's what I want to bring you. Now, this is from Keith Downey, who is the Newcastle correspondent for Sky Sports. It's from his official YouTube channel. Now, if you think about what Sky Sports have said as a blanket policy, that it's always been a not for sale, they reiterated that line from Newcastle. Let's just have a little listen to what Keith Downey said yesterday on his channel about Isak.
On to the striking situation. Isak, I think it remains the same. I can tell you Isak hasn't been at the training ground. Certainly, when checked on Monday, he hadn't been there, I don't think, for a few days. What he's doing, I'm not too sure. without doubt, as you all know, his head's been turned. I fully expect if Liverpool come to the table and offer a big offer, that deal will get done. It's just whether if Liverpool can come up with the funds or not. You know, I know Newcastle have set the fee at 150 and that's what they want. I think they'll end up doing a deal for around about 135, something like that, which is still smashes the Premier League record. I just think what's the point in having a player who's unsettled, who's unhappy, who's maybe causing some problems? Unless Eddie and the chairman can do a job between now and then and get his head into the right space. What a job it would be, by the way. And he'd obviously have to get a pay rise as part of that. I've got a couple of mates who are like, just give him what he wants, get a year out of him. I just don't know if it works like that in football. I think once a player's head's turned, it's hard to get them on it.
Quite distinct there, isn't it? I mean, we've got a fee in the discussion now all of a sudden and not for sale and talk of 150. I mean, that's come down to a deal for 135 or somewhere around there, which, as is right, would be a British record, big money for Newcastle. And I'm sure there'll be Newcastle fans listening. There seems to be on every pod I do at the moment. That's not being derogatory. Newcastle could use that 135 million. They've had a nightmare this summer, as Newcastle fans will attest to. That can help them land strikers, defenders. And I know it doesn't work this way. I know Newcastle almost want at least one through the door. And I understand that to do Isak. Again, Indy and others saying it could be a big day or a big week, as a few have alluded to. There's still time. We're just going to have to wait and see. But you could sense almost the inevitability there, couldn't you, from the Newcastle spot correspondent saying literally that, you know, if his head's not there, if he wants to move, which is absolutely clear, he's not at the training ground as well, things need to move on. So we'll see if anything does develop today. What developed yesterday, as a fair few have, young Will Wright has joined from Salford. His deal has been signed. The 17-year-old talent has signed a 3-year contract until 2028, which someone might correct me in the chat panel if I'm wrong, but I think that's the limit for a youth scholar, as it's called, that they can sign. And what's also funny that we like about this deal, we beat Arsenal to it, didn't we, as well? That Arsenal had a deal agreed, but he went, no, I want to go to Liverpool. So it just makes us like him a little bit more. And with Will Wright, don't expect to be seeing him anytime soon. Yeah, he's going to go in the youth team with Rob Page and the 21s, isn't he? And try and develop from there. So we'll see what happens on that one. And the only other real developments that came yesterday was just around the centre-back situation. Now, I think it's pretty unanimous across the fan base. We want a centre-back, and we want a centre-back badly, don't we? Because we're looking and going, well, yeah, there's VVD, there's Ibu. Ibu had a good season last year in terms of minutes, but there's always that risk. Joe Gomez, okay, he's on a minor Achilles injury. We all know our thoughts about. I love Joe Gomez as a player, but the injury record, Jarell Kwanzaa's gone. And even that second half against Yokohama Juniors, Tsimikas and Endo were at centre-back. And Slots talked before we could move Gravenberg. I mean, no one wants to see this. Everyone wants to see a centre-half come through the door. And then Sammy Mockball, the BBC senior football correspondent, had an article out yesterday about Palace, and it mentioned, as the tweet, will Liverpool bid for Mark Guehi? Now, this one, again, another one that seems to have dragged and dragged and dragged. So if you look at the article here from Sammy, there's quite a bit. Liverpool have got a genuine interest in Guehi, which I think we know, but it's this line. Palace are believed to want around 40 million for Guehi, but Liverpool want to pay less than that figure. That, again, if that line's true, that does surprise me a little bit, I have to be honest, because if someone, it's not my money, of course, and obviously I don't know all the ins and outs, but I think if we're all honest across the board now, if someone said 40 million in a deal, struck however, but 40 million for Mark Guehi, I think we all shake hands on that right now and just get him through the door. You get him through the door right now and think, can I actually have him ready for this Bilbao friendly on Monday even, because you want them up to speed straight away. So it does surprise me. I just have a wonder on this that Liverpool, I know there was a sell-on clause, for Jarell Quansah to buy Leverkusen, but we're almost looking to, they made 35 million, wasn't it? That was the reported fee, and they don't want to spend any more than that. Because I actually think The fact he would class as homegrown, the Premier League tax, 40 million for Mark Guehi, for me personally, is more than reasonable, and I would do that, but it doesn't seem like Liverpool are, if that is true. And then other centre-halves, we did mention them on the transfer show last night. We're aware Liverpool have spoken to Koni De Winter, Genoa, the Belgian international, can play centre-back, right-back, and also defensive midfielders, but aerially dominant, over 70% aerial duel rate. And, you know, we love an aerial duel rate for a centre-half, don't we? Some more than others. But the other one as well, the man on the screen, which funnily enough has another link to Newcastle as well, Jan-Paul van Hecke, the Brighton centre-half, the Dutch international, 25 years old, 2 years left to go on his deal. And there was a few sources it mentions there in Holland saying that Newcastle had approached Brighton about him, but the price had put them off, a Seagulls asking price of 43 million quid. Now, that does seem lofty for suggestions that Van Hecke won't be signing a new deal there, 2 years left to go. So maybe that could be knocked down a bit. At the same time, people are going to be screaming, you're dealing with Bloom and Barber, which I totally get. Ruthless operators, aren't they, at the same time? But yeah, those are the two names. I think we all just want a centre-half through the door. As much as we're talking about attacking reinforcements and we've done some brilliant business, I think there's a little bit of nervousness at the moment in the fan base, and maybe you disagree with me, that we're doing everything in the attacking sense and we look so much stronger, but are we doing enough defensively? And maybe the fact that we had to play Tsimikas and Endo at centre-back for the second half for the risk tells its own story. Again, we still await news on Joe Gomez. It'd be nice to see him back for Bilbao, wouldn't it? Or to get some sort of updates. We await that from Arne Slot as well. But yeah, Thursday, the 31st of July, the last day of the month. There's a lot of things we're hoping for. There's a lot of things we're waiting for. Let's see if the GOAT himself, Indy Callier, is correct on this. We'll see anyway, won't we? But Thursday, the 31st of July, that was another news round.